Here in Colorado, we're taking our heads up out of the sand. Not in the neighborhood of most dangerous drugs in the entire world.
You can raise a question of what kind of a democracy in prisons with 5% of the world's population has 25% of the world's prisoners.
Americans believe what they see, not necessarily what the government tells them.
Cannabis is a medicine that's been around for many thousands of years. This is a genie that's not going back into the bottle.
Am I the only one that sees through the propaganda?
You're on the right side of morality, you're on the right side of history, you're on the right side of economic theory. This whole marijuana thing, it's part of a broader discussion about our society that we need to have.
How does it compare to the other substances that we regulate, the other psychoactive substances like alcohol, like tobacco, even like caffeine?
People need to really educate themselves. I can envision, people in nursing homes using cannabis. Most of our products being made out of hemp.
This cannabis plant is an incredibly redeeming plant. It's important to understand as a society how important this plant will be as we continue to evolve.
I was raised very conservatively. The propaganda against marijuana, you fear it. With really no experience of it, with no knowledge of it, I was very, very strongly against it. All through high school, all through the entire Marine Corps experience, and even after my first year of school. Within that first hit, everything changed.
Why would this decorated Iraq War veteran be considered a criminal, along with the millions of other people who use marijuana both medically and recreationally, when the majority of Americans support legalization? I'm Colorado marijuana industry insider Hunter Bradshaw. Welcome to the conversation. This is Growing Reason.
January 1, we had people camped out front. The first people got there about 2 o'clock in the morning. We had red ropes to manage the crowd. It was really cold here in January, so we went out immediately and rented propane heaters to set up in the lines. The lines got all the way down the block. We had a 3-hour wait to get into the store, and that was ringing a transaction every 90 seconds, which I think is even acceptable by fast food standards.
You think about not Y2K necessarily, but Black Thursday, day after Thanksgiving, people rushing the Walmarts, rushing the Targets, and people weren't pushing. People were in a good mood. People were friendly. People were excited to see that one of their government officials was actually out there.
Media outlets from across the world showed up wanting to cover something crazy happening, and instead what they saw was just a bunch of excited people from across the world waiting in line.
There was a lot of excitement, really long lines, and really calm people, just excited to be the first people to say they purchased marijuana legally.
What we saw firsthand here was a massive amount of people showing up to celebrate and to, again, support the movement and celebrate the end of Prohibition. And, we were able to see about 400 people on January 1st. We probably had about 1,500 people show up to try to get in.
Most people wait in line for 4 hours. They're angry. I never had anybody even remotely upset that they had to wait. It was more of a social gathering than it was a line.
We didn't really see any sort of disorder. People were nice and happy, and it was a very fun day, which was tremendously relieving, because I think there is a bit of the fear of the unknown for everybody there.
I talked to this one gentleman. I said, "How long have you been waiting in line?" And he said, "I've been waiting here for 2 hours, 45 minutes, and 59 years, and I am so excited." Like, people just could not believe that they were allowed to come in and actually shop for cannabis.
Because of marijuana's universal ability to transcend age, gender, and culture, The excitement over legal marijuana has gained worldwide momentum, and the issue is now front and center on the global stage.
There's a global message that is certainly more human-related to this overall issue than it is anything to do with the plant itself. And for 99% of our history, marijuana was already legal. It was something that was available for sale. You could use it. Oftentimes it was used for spiritual and medicinal purposes. And I think that there's a common thread that still exists across humanity in allowing people to experiment with our human consciousness. It's a natural human desire that has existed for thousands of years. And we have to be real when we're talking about people's want to experiment with marijuana.
Marijuana is like alcohol to some people in that it can relax them. It's something to take their mind off troubles, whether you're in India or the US or Brazil. My wife is from Iran. I was able to go to Iran with her in September, which is very hard for an American to do. I had a conversation at a party, and one of the guys there in broken English asked me where I was from. And when I said Colorado, his eyes kind of lit up and he smiled and he said, "Oh, marijuana legalization." In Iran, someone was saying this, which is a very closed-off country. So this is becoming a worldwide thing.
You know, it's not just Colorado, it's not just Washington, it's not just the 20 other states that have adopted the medical use of cannabis. It's countries like Uruguay, which have just legalized it and is now creating a regulatory program. It is countries like the Czech Republic, who is looking for ways to integrate the use of cannabis in its medical framework and in its system. And so it really is the awakening and sort of the first step of an international consensus that we need better alternatives.
Colorado called for those better alternatives, and it's personally been an honor to have been a part of this process. You know, I've helped dispensary owners with inventory control, all kinds of compliance issues. I've helped them to get their recreational licenses, and I'm happy to call many of them friends, hundreds of them friends, and many of them are in this film. And I think that we all feel honored at the end of the day to really have this opportunity in this time and space to do what we're doing, particularly when the rest of the world doesn't have that opportunity. Well, yet anyway.
Sooner or later, you're just not going to continue to live in a community where you're being oppressed. That's why, so far in Colorado, what we've seen is we've attracted more businesses, more employers, and more people to our state, because those people who were already entrepreneurs, already business people, already creative, decided that they wanted to leave wherever they were doing that and bring that to Colorado, because they also like to consume marijuana and don't want to no longer want to live in a state that doesn't support that.
The drug war has been awful. It has been one of the worst policies in the history of the United States. We're 40 years into the drug war. We spent $1 trillion. We have the highest incarceration rate in the entire world, higher than Iran, North Korea, China, Saudi Arabia, the highest incarceration rate in the world, and marijuana is universally available.
As soon as you move to criminalize anything, you, in effect, create a society where trust begins to evaporate. It was corrupting for police, for judges, for lawyers, and for what is now the vast criminal justice system in the United States.
Frankly, I don't think a law enforcement officer who thinks that I'm ruining my life for smoking marijuana should put me in jail and ruin my life for doing that activity.
You cannot study the drug war or teach people about the drug war without, in effect, playing it out against a much broader backdrop. That is essential.
I oppose the legalization of marijuana, and that includes its sale, its possession, and its use. I do not believe you can have effective criminal justice based on the philosophy that something is half legal and half illegal. That is my position, despite what the Commission has recommended.
We've talked about this so-called war on drugs since, well, at least since Nixon. And we've seen that the traditional way of fighting this war hasn't been successful. It's been very costly in terms of the cost of people's lives, the rise of criminal cartels in foreign countries that have come across the border into America. And we've seen that there's now a better way to do things.
The scientific community, particularly the international scientific community out of Israel, out of Japan, out of the UK, that have been studying this now for decades, I think further reinforce the point that we have an opportunity here. We have a botanical bonanza. Our medical director likes to say, if this plant were discovered in the Amazon, 60 days ago, 2 months ago, and it didn't carry with it the taboo and it didn't carry with it the social stigma of 70 years of prohibition, Big Pharma would be salivating and would be duking it out to see who has control of this plant.
Marijuana was part of the American toolbox for medicine for the entire history of the continent until 70 years ago. This is just back to the future.
I never would have believed even 5 years ago that we would be here today, and this is exactly where we are.
People are going into a store, they're purchasing marijuana that's tested, that's safe, that's regulated, they know what they're getting, they're having a better experience, they're coming from all over the world to do it, and they're doing so, and they're leaving all of that money in the coffers of those city governments.
This model that Colorado has set up is a model that could be replicated not only in the United States amongst other states, but really anywhere in the world. It's the same mantra of tax it and legalize it, and we're seeing that happen with great success in Colorado, and the rest of the world is truly watching how this rolls out.
We've reached a point where now the voters, 55% of the voters in Colorado have passed Amendment 64. And they have said, look, we should license marijuana businesses. We should regulate and tax marijuana sales. And these businesses can exist, and we're okay with that.
I think Colorado's a great testing state. And I think once they see how successful it's been here, how there's been a lot of us following the regulations and following the rules and how successful it's been, the revenue we're bringing in, then I think slowly America will jump on board.
The whole world is watching. We're doing something here that's never happened before. We've got to be better than anyone thought we could be.
It's incredibly important to understand as a society how important this plant will be as we continue to evolve. We're certainly in the midst of what I would describe as political, legal, and social change, and I would suggest that Colorado is really the nexus of that.
It takes incredibly talented and dedicated individuals to lead the type of social change that we are seeing here in Colorado. And many of those all-stars work here in this mansion that houses the marijuana law offices of Vicente Cederberg. Several of the other socially influential organizations and people leading the movement also operate here, including Mason Tavert, the communications director of the Marijuana Policy Project.
Leading up to 2012, we really focused on educating voters about the simple fact that marijuana is safer than alcohol, because we knew that once they came to understand that, there would be a lot of support for treating it that way. And so we ran local ballot initiatives, we ran a statewide ballot initiative in 2006, all with the real overarching goal of forcing a public dialogue about marijuana and marijuana policy, and ultimately to build support for a future statewide initiative that we could actually win.
Well, so we are basically in the epicenter of marijuana reform in the country, in my opinion. This is what's known as the Marijuana Mansion. It's the Vicente Cederberg Law Office. Right behind this building is a carriage house, which is known as the Cannabis Cottage, where there are 4 or 5 marijuana reform nonprofit organizations. And so it's really a great think tank for changing marijuana law.
Can we advise people on something that is federally illegal under our rules of professional conduct? Those are the rules that lawyers have to live by. The laws were created by legislators, the laws are enforced by cops, and to deny access to people, to lawyers who are passionate about it and who are educated on the issue would be a fundamental miscarriage of justice. So that's a risk that we're all willing to take.
We've proven in Colorado that a state can change its laws simply by having a conversation about marijuana that is based on the facts. And people in states around the country need to really learn from that and force that discussion in their communities. And without a doubt, we'll see laws changing around the country.
These people that have operated these businesses in the face of the Controlled Substances Act, knowing very well that the federal government could come in at any time and arrest them, take their property, and it could severely affect their lives, but they do it because they know it's the right thing to do.
I'm Steve Ackerman, and I've lived in Fort Collins since 1972. And I have been in this business, Organic Alternatives, since 2010. When the dispensary started opening up in 2009, it was referred to as the Wild West because there was no regulation. And Then in November of 2010, two elections in neighboring towns, Windsor and Loveland, took place in which the voters voted to ban medical marijuana sales in their cities. At that point, I saw where they were going to be looking next. Well, this started a movement by our opposition to shut us down. A petition drive was started in the spring of 2011 by our opposition and soon garnered enough signatures to get this on the ballot in November. 37 came out to vote, 37,000 came out to vote, and we lost by a total of 1,400 votes. We closed down and began to try to figure out how to go forward. If it's legal for everyone in Fort Collins to possess an ounce of marijuana, but there's no place for them to buy it legally, it'd be like saying, okay, you can all have cars, but there won't be any gas for sale.
This connects to so many other issues. The best way to get credibility, the best way to make sure that you're going to be heard is to learn about other issues that are similar, so that when you're talking to somebody that doesn't care about marijuana at all, but they certainly care about food, or they certainly care about the environment, or they certainly care about same-sex family rights, that you can talk to them in their language and see how our causes are the one and the same.
I go door to door, and as soon as I get a person in front of me, I just start talking to them about the issue. Most of the time, people are willing to engage in a short conversation about it, and typically, when they hear it's about small business, they're right there in support.
I have to say I take both sides with a grain of salt. One side is asking for a market where they can sell to individuals. The other side is wishing this would go away. I understand those motives. The bottom line for me is the question of safety and what's best for our communities.
My manager, Kirk, here called me up and said, Steve, we've got to get this back on the ballot. And I went, because I've just been through one election, and but I also knew that we needed to get it back on the ballot or we were going to lose it here. We started a petition drive. We garnered a little over 10,000 signatures, and then we started a campaign that was actually pretty limited because we had limited funds and limited staff. On November 1st, Kirk and I sat and watched the returns in disbelief that we had won by a vote, 56% to 44%, saying they wanted to overturn the ban. So our getting the medical marijuana back on the ballot and winning it actually paved the way to have the possibility of retail outlets in Fort Collins.
As more communities start reporting their experiences with the marijuana industry in their backyards, we believe that the reefer madness stigma will eventually go away, that other communities will be more willing and open to embrace these types of establishments and see that there's really nothing wrong with it and that marijuana is really just a commodity.
I grew up in Chicago, Illinois. I had a pretty normal childhood. Grew up in family of 5. Worked most of my life. I was taught to work at a young age. When I wasn't working, of course, we was out there with the guys and messed around with like all the other kids, playing baseball, football, going out to the park, fishing, whatever we could do to be kids,
The amount of people that I've encountered here at our store now in the last 3 months that are coming in that had stopped buying marijuana. They had stopped, maybe even stopped using marijuana, not because they didn't enjoy it or that they didn't like it, just because they were tired of trying to score marijuana.
Of course, a black market is worse off for Colorado than a legal market. And I think one of the positive things that comes from legalizing marijuana is that we have a regulated market.
So the role of the Marijuana Enforcement Division is to regulate marijuana businesses both in the medical marijuana segment and the retail marijuana segment, specifically on the commercial side. Marijuana inventory tracking system is a regulatory tool that we use to monitor our licensees to ensure that they're accounting for and being transparent with their inventory.
This is the tag, the official tag from the Colorado Department of Revenue, the Medical Marijuana Enforcement Division. This itself is a medical tag, as we see here. This little thing is called a universal symbol. and the universal symbol has to be on all cannabis and medical products that are produced within the regulatory framework. So if you don't see the symbol, it's not the real thing. There is an RFID tag inside of here. The regulator can actually come in here and electronically monitor and account for the number of plants grown in the facility.
They're required to account for it from the time the plant is an immature plant all the way until the time it's harvested at a cultivation, transported to a retail establishment or a medical marijuana center, and sold at the point of sale.
The regulated model is really about two things. Number one, making sure that we have a nice, tight, closed-loop system of production and distribution. All the products that are manufactured within the regulated model are then sold through authorized points. And number two, making sure that unauthorized end users don't have access to the system.
Most of what we're trying to do is make sure that these rules work, and that the public safety measures that we've all come up with to have, accountability and transparency, that all that is happening in an efficient and effective manner.
I'm Amy Poinsett. I'm the co-founder and CEO of MJ Freeway. Our software is a seed-to-sale business software platform. We track every gram with inventory control and plant management, and then we do compliance. We provide tools for our clients, the cultivators or the center owners, to follow state compliance. So we guarantee, in fact, that we'll meet any compliance requirement either at the state or federal level for tracking marijuana. So we really view it as our job to create technology that's simple and easy to use, that makes it easy for people to comply with these requirements so that we can all run successful and sustainable businesses and help the industry grow as it moves forward.
We asked to be regulated, and we've asked to be regulated since we got medical. And the only way we are going to be able to build a great industry in this state and be a model for the country is to be well regulated and to show strong compliance. And so the industry, when we've had the last few months some incidents with edibles, we've reacted. We've been very nimble about trying to get ahead of those things.
We're actually setting up an entire system where we could do a recall. So if somebody gets sick off of, let's say, an edible product, they'll be able to go back to that infused products manufacturer and say, hey, was it the marijuana that made you sick or was it the eggs? And then if it's the marijuana, they'll be able to go back to the grow facility and look at that process. Is the fertilizer, is that clean? What about the pesticides that have been used? Are those safe for consumers? And it's very exciting to think about that because obviously the black market doesn't do recalls.
On just the market side, I would say that what we have is a regulated market, and we're going to have to watch how that goes. And before, we couldn't track it. And so there is inherent good to having more information and bringing it all above ground and talking about it honestly.
You don't have to buy a bunch of marijuana at one time. Do you go to the store, do you go to the liquor store and go up and say, oh my gosh, my favorite beer just got in stock? You don't buy a pallet of it, you buy a 12-pack of it because it'll be there the next time you come back. And so it's the same thing now with marijuana.
The black market is huge, we know that, and we've taken a chunk out of it. How big that chunk is, we don't know. How big the black market is right now, that's also a very difficult question to answer.
It does need to be regulated in the sense that the labeling needs to be sufficient to allow people to take a correct dosage to avoid bad experiences. I think the acceptance of it is coming about really quickly in Colorado. I don't think we're far from dinner parties where instead of a bottle of wine, you could bring a nice sativa joint along with you, and the host would be just as excited about that, if not more.
In 2009, my phone started to ring with a lot of people inquiring about if I could help them investigate the medical marijuana industry. Most of the time it was my own longtime clients who wanted to know if they could rent warehouses to people wanting to grow medical marijuana. This industry already exists, and all you have to do is flip a switch and make it legal, and you immediately need leases and landlords and accountants and lawyers and all the things that a normal everyday business needs.
Dank Dispensary in North Denver is one of the top centers in Colorado, and they allowed us inside their operation to capture the interworkings of a top-notch legal marijuana center.
I am the founding partner of Dank LLC. We started in September 2009. January of 2010, the City Council of Denver came up with the first business license that was available, and that was a dispensary license. And what they said was anybody selling marijuana to more than 6 people have to get this dispensary license. that brings us to today, where we have now a medical marijuana sales license and a grow license, and we have a recreational marijuana sales license and a grow license, both through the city of Denver and the state of Colorado.
One of the smart things Colorado did early on was the industry did not fight the product being subject to sales tax. So the government immediately got a revenue stream. People ask me a lot of times, well, why is the actual growing of the plant deductible and the retail overhead is not? The definition of income for the IRS is gross profit. Your sales less your cost of goods sold is your gross profit. All deductions after that are at the bequest of Congress. If a business here in Colorado has multiple retail outlets, they could be in a situation where their taxes are higher than their profit. It is a death knell for the industry if the 280E issue is not fixed.
My name is Jackson Pixley. I'm the head of security here at Dank. Almost half of our business here is from out-of-state people, so they've never done this before. Nobody under the age of 21 has ever gotten past me on my watch.
So the main things I'm responsible for are social media, marketing outreach, making sure those bud tenders are up to date with their knowledge, really making sure customer service is up to date. I would say the most important thing I do is really focusing on customer service, making sure that every patient customer leaves here more than happy, wanting to come back, telling their friends about us, and really feeling like we provided them with the best information that we could.
So many people in Colorado know how to grow a little bit of pot in their basement or throw a couple plants out in the garden with the tomato plants. But to do it on a bigger scale and maintain the quality is something that is difficult, and that we've worked hard to do that. We've had quite a few agents from the MED come in here, not on an inspection level, but as more to learn about what's going on and to use their equipment and to talk to us about processes and how things work in the grow, so that we can all get better and everyone can be on the same page and we can all learn about all these new things, because it's new to everybody, not just to us, but it's new to the government, it's new to the inspectors.
One of the more common violations that we see is they're missing material portions of an inventory control mechanism within MITs. For example, they don't have plants tagged. They haven't accounted for all of their harvest batches. Those things rise to a much higher level and are more concerning for us, and so then we would deal with those a little differently while we're on premises.
These plants are all tagged just like every other tag. We've got a recreational plant tag here. Over here on this OG Kush, we have a medical tag on that.
Dank, the dispensary, is known for being 100% compliant, following all the laws, working with the MED of Colorado, and really forming a partnership with them. It's a two-way street here where they can come in anytime they want and look at a process.
We're more concerned with, do they have too much or are they within the acceptable range? And we use the marijuana inventory tracking system to monitor those amounts of production.
Now, this is an economic juggernaut. One thing I like to tell people is that you've never seen anything like this, except maybe the end of Prohibition in 1933. We are definitely pushing the envelope on the definition of legal tender. And as people pay millions and millions of dollars in cash. This industry really needs access to banking. It's actually a public safety issue. The banking industry in Colorado really wants to bank this industry. They know it's good business. They know this industry needs loans and working capital and would like to take their deposits. But because it's still federally illegal, that causes a lot of regulatory headaches. Headaches to the extent that it's not worth the banks taking the risk to bank this industry.
Now the clones don't get a tag yet. So once these get roots, we'll select out the healthy clones, and then those will get a plant tag and then be RFID tagged for the rest of their life. Most of your really good marijuana doesn't have as high of a yield. So there's plants out there that might yield a lot more, but they're less quality. So it's also about being able to balance that a little bit and grow some marijuana that maybe isn't quite as strong, but you get a little more out of it, versus the stuff that's, you know, really high end that you get smaller amounts. We'll go over here and look at a couple flowering rooms. These plants live here for about 9 weeks till they get harvested total time. So we actually weigh the entire plant system. This plant was actually born back in April and then got transplanted in May. We're going to strip all the buds down off of this plant. They'll go through this trim machine. So these plants here have been broken all down from the plant system. And then we collect trim to make hash and other stuff out of. These are the drying and the curing rooms here. Feedback I've had on the perceived impact with the neighborhood and everyone that lives around here, it's been positive. You know, marijuana is something that a lot more people than we realized were using. Now that it's legal, people are treating it more like they buy other things, whether it's going to the grocery store once a week or going and buying a 6-pack of beer or a bottle of wine. They come to the recreational store now and enjoy being able to purchase meds in a safe way and a responsible way. People really like paying the taxes because they know it's going to good things, it's helping the community. The excise tax helps with building new schools, so the perceived impact's been great.
Try to think of another industry that has supported a tax on itself. But then again, try to think of another industry that has embraced 500 pages of regulations on itself too.
The question that we need to ask ourselves is, are we taxing it too high? Are we taxing it too low? It's kind of the Goldilocks principle. If we tax it too high, it goes back into the black market, people buy it cheaper, but it ends up in the hands of kids and criminals again. If we tax it too low, we can't do the seed to sale tracking. We can't do some of the other things that we'd like to do with those taxes to make sure that kids aren't using and criminals aren't profiting from this.
Money's flowing now into hundreds of brand new entrepreneurial startup businesses. And for every dollar that's spent at a business, that's multiplied throughout the local economy. So the impact is significant.
The economic ripple effect that we have here, we're seeing it to the tune of tens of millions of dollars that are entering what was until very recently an economy that was suffering from the worst downturn in living history.
I don't have the exact quote from Mark Twain, but the quote paraphrase is something like, if you find yourself in the middle of the gold rush, realize that it's the person selling shovels that might be doing better than anybody else.
After building a very successful dispensary business, the guys at Dank expanded into a critical area of the legal marijuana industry, child-proof packaging. In the warehouse right behind their dispensary, they operate Kush Bottles Colorado, which distributes child-proof containers to a large number of other dispensaries in the state.
We're the distributor of Kush bottles here in the state of Colorado. The big plan is for Kush bottles to be sold nationwide. Right along here are the twist top bottles. Mainly the Kush bottles are what we primarily sell here, and those come in 10 different colors, 4 different sizes, and it really just allows different things to go in different containers for different uses. So this is one of the 13 dram in lime or green. So it's hard enough that a child is not able to open it, but yet still meets the standards for elderly standards. We're an all-American company. Our product is made in Pennsylvania. It's shipped out here. We distribute it locally. It's something that's really worked for all the dispensaries here in the state. They can call us, and a lot of times we come same day. This is really a model of making sure that everybody is allowing marijuana to grow responsibly, to be in compliant child-safe bottles. For the entire state, this is something that we're all working together on to make sure that we're all being compliant, we're all being safe, and it's in packaging that is going to allow people to feel safe about this product that's so new and growing right now.
Well, the medical marijuana and adult use market here in Colorado is incredibly complicated because it's growing exponentially. I think in 2010, infused products represented probably about 8% of what was likely about an $80 million market. In 2014, the market has been forecasted to exceed $900+ million. So one of the things that we have installed is what we call the car wash effect. And so now we anticipate hosting upwards of 1,000 visitors a quarter, primarily cannabis business owners, And then, most importantly, regulators, law enforcement officers, legislators, truly to demystify what we're doing here. So we've created these windows that allow you to actually peer into production rooms, either one or two, and get an idea as to what we're doing, but not actually disrupt or contaminate the actual rooms themselves. And so this is, I would suggest, a very unique facility and one of the probably few in the country that allows for this. This is my probably my most sophisticated and I dare say complicated piece of equipment. This is a bottling line that we have designed and literally assembled. This will ultimately increase our manufacturing capabilities by in excess of 1,000% a day. And so we'll be able to manufacture upwards of 6,000 units in an 8-hour shift. Utilizing THC, the cannabis oil, is an incredibly complicated ingredient because of its viscosity, and it's incredibly sticky. It sticks to everything. And so under this halo, we'll be able to produce literally tens of thousands of units on a weekly basis and ultimately meet the demand. If you hear around us, there's construction all around us. As you can see, we still have a lot more work, but again, another facility, a room that has been completely gutted. And so that's the immediate benefit, is we're spending literally tens of hundreds of millions of dollars as an industry building out commercial cultivation facilities, or what I would call state-of-the-art production facilities. That's the obvious, the construction industry. But then you start to look at the consultants that we work with, lawyers, tax accountants, security professionals that traditionally wouldn't be involved in this industry, and it has a much more global impact. The trickle-down effect from the cannabis industry is not insignificant here in the state of Colorado, and likely many other states as we progress.
The state has seen an incredible windfall that's going to be used in a variety of different ways for education, but also through training programs and regulation of the stores.
The funding that comes in through the tax revenues is going to be used to address some of the attendant social issues that come along with the legalization of marijuana. Public awareness campaigns, substance abuse concerns, and anything that would aid in keeping the product out of the hands of individuals who are under 21 years of age.
We've got to make sure that our marijuana enforcement division has the money, the resources, the authority, and the staff to actually enforce this new market that's never been employed anywhere, honestly, anywhere in the world.
There's no one out in front of you that has tried this, and so really we're creating everything really from the ground up.
There was high tech and computers, and before that maybe you had automobiles. You can chart the course of history in the business world. Marijuana is going to stand out on that timeline, and there's going to be a big dot representing when this industry came. It's going to be billions of dollars, potentially tens of billions of dollars. We don't really see the genie going back in the bottle at this point. It might take a long time to live out its full potential. If we get a new president, who knows what will happen, but it's going to be hard to go backwards at this point.
The wide-reaching impact of the marijuana industry on Colorado's economy has been tremendous and extends far past the uplifting sativas and relaxing indica flowers that are sold across the state. One facet of the industry that has seen massive growth is that of marijuana concentrates, including hash oil. Hash oil is extremely versatile, and many consumers are now replacing the smoking of flower with the vaporization of hash oil as a healthier alternative.
One of the partners at Open Vape and was one of the original founding members of Organolabs that produces the oil for Open Vape. When we started off, we obviously had no office space, and so the space we had to meet with people was literally in our cannabis centers. We just happened into this building, it just happened to be available. It's got big open ceilings, it's got a big open floor plan. It is just an awesome creative space that allows us to present a very professional image to people that come to visit, but is also really functional for a day-to-day workspace. Open Vape started as a medical marijuana company, and so was producing medical grade oil and putting them into a product that we thought had a great application for medical marijuana patients, in the sense that they're vaporizing it and not smoking oil, as well as being a very measured, titratable dose that would allow people to take exactly what they wanted.
These guys here are your disposable cartridges that you can pick up at any Open Vape retailer. What's inside here is a honey oil that we create here in Denver and in our respective states of California, Washington, and Oregon.
It's a very simple device. It's a battery on one side that can be charged on a USB port, so you can plug it right into your computer. It lasts for between 25 and 30 hours. And then an attachment that goes on that contains the atomizer that actually heats up and does the vaporizing, as well as the strain-specific oil. Once you have the battery, you can just purchase the cartridge. It screws right on. It's air activated, so there's no buttons. When you draw through it, you're vaporizing hash oil that fast. If you detach the cartridge from the battery, the whole unit is rendered completely useless. So it's just another line in the defense of keeping it out of the hands of minors as well. I'm a father and I have a 2-year-old son, and I don't ever want him to smell cannabis on my breath. He's too young to be exposed to it. Vaporizing is a more discreet way to use cannabis in the sense that you don't have the odor on your breath from smoking cannabis. Vaporizing is a healthier alternative, and consumers have embraced vaporizing for all those reasons.
My focus this past legislative session was, first of all, to deal with the concept and the product of marijuana concentrates, to make sure that you have an equal standard across the different types of marijuana, whether it be leaf or bud or wax or oil, and thankfully we accomplished that and had broad support for that. But I am not in favor of the legal recreational marijuana market that's developed in Colorado.
Representative McNulty's opposition to legal marijuana stems from his concerns that marijuana will have a negative impact on society. And that's why he works extremely hard at the state capitol to pass legislation that he feels will regulate legal marijuana in a way that protects Colorado's communities, particularly the youth population. The industry is also making efforts to protect consumers, and we spoke with Aaron Smith, CEO of the National Cannabis Industry Association, at one of their many consumer education events.
This is an event that, it's an educational event. We're talking about responsible use of concentrates and the industry's role in consumer education around concentrates and around the harm reduction policies and practices that we can promote as an industry. We're being proactive in ensuring that consumers that are starting to use cannabis concentrates understand the effects of the substance and can make sure that they're in a safe and secure place and space when doing so. By doing an event like this, we're just helping to educate those in the room who are primarily retail cannabis providers on what kinds of things to talk about with their customers and their consumers.
Welcome to Ganja Gourmet. Baba Booey to you all. We have the largest selection of edibles anywhere in the state. We've gone into doing a little bit of tincture extractions and bubble hash extractions. You could add that to any product. Therefore, there's no edible product out there that couldn't be medicated.
I have asthma, so I try to stay away from smoking as much as possible. I'm more of an edible person. I know my milligram dosage, so I try to use responsibly at the right time and setting. I don't use during the day. I use primarily at night, like having a glass of beer or wine after work. Helps me unwind, helps me refocus, helps me become introspective.
Edibles have been around and in the market in medical cannabis for a number of years. The medical patients for a long time have known that these things are really potent, don't need a lot of them.
Now, as far as edibles taking over the whole smoking market, I don't think that will ever happen. I mean, smoking is just so common and accepted and used to it. People love it. But still, even though people are coming from all over the state to check out our edibles, we still sell more marijuana buds and concentrates than we do edibles.
It's very different than inhaling cannabis smoke. You get an almost immediate response physiologically and biologically as to how much was enough. But when you eat an edible, it goes all the way through your digestive tract before it's in your bloodstream, and it takes a little while.
You eat too much edible, you're not going to feel good. So I totally respect and understand the concerns of the government in trying to keep it just, regulated and safe. However, I do think that most of it lies in the education of the consumer from the bud tender.
Again, therein lies the conundrum or the challenge for the industry is to make people believe you when you say start low and go slow, because it's going to take a while for you to feel any effects of that which you just consumed.
I was one of only 2 sitting state legislators that publicly endorsed Amendment 64, the legalization of recreational marijuana. It was me and actually a Tea Party Republican. So now we're friends on Facebook.
When we came to the legislature, we were coming there because no one was expecting us to be there. What they were expecting was for Amendment 64 to fail. They were expecting to have a bill to ban medical marijuana stores. They weren't expecting to be drafting a bill to allow retail stores. Instead, the conversation that we need to have is like, well, we won by more votes than the president, and we're here to start getting our licenses, and the clock is ticking because your deadline is in the Constitution.
There's a time and a place for everything, but the legalization of marijuana in Colorado was specifically geared towards adult use.
To me, it's about our schools, our kids, and our communities. We predicted in advance of the passage of recreational marijuana in this state that we would see a spike in the use among adolescents.
We need to look at how this is affecting our youth. Is it getting better or is it getting worse for youth out there in terms of youth use? If it's getting worse, I think we should look at after-school programs. It's probably the #1 thing we can do for our youth is not only make sure that they're educated about this as a drug, and it is a drug, but also make sure that they have the activities that they can engage in that are pro-social activities.
Children and youth have been getting into drugs and have had drugs available to them, whether they were legal or not. It's really important that, you know, if parents are enjoying marijuana edibles and they have young children or young adults in their household, they need to make sure that, much like the liquor cabinet that was locked in my parents' house, you know, that they make sure that they're protecting their children and they're keeping those items out of harm's way for their kids.
Youth prevention is absolutely a top priority in this experiment. And while we don't know the exact numbers on teen use since the legalization of marijuana in 2014, what we do know is that from the federal government's report from 2009 to 2011, and coincidentally that's the same amount of time that the medical marijuana program was being established, that teen use in Colorado of marijuana actually went down during that period. And that's from the federal government.
I think you need to be honest with your children. Unlike what the government has told us in the past with the war on drugs and the DARE program, where essentially they really don't give us the truth and the facts.
It needs to be part of the open conversation with kids. And it can't be just, we can't avoid talking about it and hope that it will go away, because it's not going away.
I'm very honest with my children. They know that I smoke. They also know that they have to be 21 to consume in the state of Colorado. And they know that it's not legal everywhere. And they know that it's something that can affect their growth and development and their brains, and it's not for children. And that's why we have a marijuana consumption age of 21, the same way we have an alcohol consumption age of 21.
Talking to my kids about marijuana, definitely they're going to grow up in an age where they don't know any difference. And, you know, by the time my kids are in high school, 10, 15 years from now, it'll just be a standard type of thing, just like alcohol is.
I did my best to make sure that we put together a robust regulatory market that made sure that we kept this drug out of the hands of kids and criminals, but made sure that it was legal for adults over the age of 21 to safely purchase this for recreational use.
Marijuana has been on the ballot 5 times in Denver. I voted against it 5 straight times. But what I began to change on medical marijuana because of my condition on my left foot, and I have plantar fasciitis. I've had it now for almost a decade. And what I've learned is if you have pain, you will do anything to overcome that pain.
For patients that use marijuana on a daily basis for medical reasons, and even for recreational users, the amount of marijuana in the bloodstream that the state has set as the DUI impairment threshold can become a heated point of contention, even when the driver in question has not consumed marijuana that day.
I've had fibromyalgia for 27 years, and I've used medical cannabis for the last 5. It's the only thing I use. And I would bet that I wake up every morning blowing 5 nanograms away, and I'm not impaired. And I'd say that's probably true for most medical marijuana patients in Colorado.
Now, that was a huge problem for us because the science was showing you can have 5 nanograms in your blood and not be impaired.
Cannabis stays in your system for a long time 30 days is the average, depending on how heavily you use it, whereas alcohol is flushed out of your body within hours. It is up to the individual and your tolerance, but frankly, at that limit and with this extra law, it's really unnecessary and unjust.
A compromise was struck, and that was 5 nanograms permissible inference. And what permissible inference basically means is that it is permissible or okay for the jury to infer that you are impaired. But it also means that you can defend yourself and you can present evidence, I wasn't actually impaired. And so it allows for a battle at the court.
Permissive inference is only a little bit better for patients because a lot of patients don't have the financial resources to defend against a case like this.
We've managed to agree and to go forward together in this campaign with just the simple message that it's not safe to use marijuana and drive.
So here's the dilemma. If I refuse the blood test, I have to give up my license for a year, and I can be forced to give up what for me and for many patients is legal access to the only medication that works.
When we're talking about convicting someone of a crime, the standard is proof beyond a reasonable doubt, not probably.
This is the new reality of Colorado. It is in the Constitution. We need to fulfill the will of the majority of Coloradans here, but we need to do it in a safe way, and that's the role that you can play. But if the role is going to be repealing the legalization of marijuana in Colorado, if the role is going to be regulating it to the point where the black market, which already exists, continues to thrive, then that's where we're gonna separate there. This isn't something that we should be relitigating. We should be fine-tuning these issues. We should be working together. If we're fighting against each other, frankly, the kids are gonna be the ones that suffer.
While legislators and the industry both work to protect and educate consumers regarding cannabis consumption, there's one side of the industry that most everyone agrees has the ability to positively impact society, and that is the cultivation of hemp. In March of 2014, the top hemp activists in the state organized an event in Boulder to discuss the stratospheric potential for the hemp industry in Colorado.
Today is actually a day of history for the hemp industry because we have officially released our state application licensing for commercial farming and research and development for hemp. So it is not only historic, but super epic.
This is just so exciting to see all these people who are interested, all these, entrepreneurs who just want to, start something literally from the ground up and create something and get, not only have Colorado lead the way in this new economy, but have the United States start leading the way in this new economy. It's just very exciting.
We now have the ability to cultivate hemp as an agricultural product, and we are last season and this season. As that becomes more prevalent, we are going to see a much greater industry in hemp than marijuana because it is so versatile and inexpensive to grow and process, and yet can do so many things.
So this is my my spot here, the Hood Lab here in Denver, Colorado. Combination art gallery and clothing retail and wholesale spot. Cool part about hemp is that when you break it all down, it's kind of like the buffalo of the plant world, You can use every single part down to the roots. The roots contain a lot of CBD, so you can make salves from the roots. So all these skin creams and salves and things that you wouldn't even have to worry about making it from the flowers. You make that from the roots. The flowers you'd make their higher quality medicines from. Our classic hoodlum. We did a collab with Jeremy Fish on this item, and this is he's an artist out of San Francisco. All of our stuff is organic cotton and organic hemp. Hemp clothing always makes people feel real good too. It's actually healthy to wear, and it's like if you wear it all the time, you start to notice that you'll always reach for it in the closet too. Even if you had all this other new stuff, you feel like go back for that one item. It's awesome stuff. Canada's scared, and China's scared because both of those places, they make all their money off of us because we don't grow 1 gram of hemp here. 420 million last year worth of hemp products consumed in America, and not 1 drop came from America. The real hemp America strains are in Nebraska, Kansas, and they've managed to keep going for 75 years on their own. There's like 100-acre crops just sitting out there alone.
We're talking about tens of thousands of jobs created from processing hemp that, by the way, used to be illegal not to plant. It can take drought, it can take moisture, and it has the versatility to go from one extreme to the other and still grow to 6 feet.
And so in a way, America has these genetics just sitting here. We just have to go out, find them there, bring them home, and start working with them. And that's the cool part now, is we're in this little, it's like a space race of hemp, you know. I'm 44, and I think a lot of people in our age group are the ones that are running things. We're the ones changing the rules. We're making things happen, and we're going to make this whole place, you know, a better place. That's the idea, at least.
So hemp is a great phytoremediator, meaning that it will uptake contaminants from the soil and bring it into the plant. And then after you cut the plant down, you now have clean soil, basically. So they're looking at using hemp as a way to clean up old army stations that have like diesel fuel contamination in the ground, or old bomb sites that are now turning into national parks.
Can Labs is a full-service analytical lab. It includes 5 chemistry tests and some microbiological tests. So potency for dosage. We also test for pesticides, residual solvents in concentrates, aflatoxins, and then microbial testing. So molds, mildew, fungus, that kind of thing.
This is what we do our potency testing on. Right now we have 9 cannabinoids in about 4.5 minutes that we test for. Samples come in and they get prepped at that bench over there. They get extraction buffer added to them. And then we take that extraction buffer and we put it into these little vials here on this instrument. And then there's a needle on the inside that comes in, it draws up the sample, brings it in, puts it into our column. And then our column goes through the detector. The column is what separates everything and tells us what is actually there. Goes into the detector, and then it gets read on the instrument, and then voila, we have a potency result.
Well, I took 2 puffs off a joint. That doesn't tell you anything. But when we can measure what exactly that joint measures in the cannabinoids and the ratio of cannabinoids, then we can start figuring out why cannabis works.
It takes forever to get permission to study marijuana if there's any suspicion that you might end up saying something good about it, right? And we need more studies on it, because basically there are vast areas of ignorance about marijuana, and we need research. But the problem is not want of researchers, it's want of money. And the money has to come from the government, like with so much else which has to do with health, you know?
It's totally wide open in cannabis. There's so many basic questions. How many species or distinct genetic groups are there? Why does it make these compounds that we find important? What purpose do these medicinal compounds serve for the plant? Because of the changing legal landscape, we're now starting to investigate other neural circuits in our brains that are based on the endocannabinoid receptors, which are perhaps at least as important, but vastly less understood. For the past 50 to 100 years, most of the work that's been done on our brains has been on the dopamine and opiate receptors, leading to a lot of modern medicine being based on compounds that are highly addictive and potentially problematic in many ways.
We test for 9 cannabinoids. Once you get your test report, you will see the ratio of cannabinoids. What percent you have of THC, what percent of CBD. And then the dispensary can take that and have it at the dispensary, so when the patient comes in or when a consumer comes in, at least the bud tender can tell them, oh, well, we have another 1-to-1 ratio.
These are machines for... The process of the genetic map that we want to make is making sense of those large chunks of sequence so that we can use that information for breeding better medicinal varieties or industrial hemp for biofuels and fiber production and other purposes, and hopefully allow us to cure things that were previously untreatable.
In 1971, I went in the military, went into the Air Force. I went through training and got up here at Whiteman Air Force Base, B-52s from Vietnam and all that. I wasn't smoking anything at that time, so, you know, about 2021 when I got out in 1975.
I've always wished that I'd grown up in the 1960s. You know, the music, the ideas exchange, you know, the progressive nature of the times. They've always been very, very alluring to me. And today, my generation, the one that's helped to bring legal marijuana here to Colorado, we've only been able to do so by standing upon the foundation that was laid by the baby boomers generation.
My personal political belief is that the young people under 40 will never vote for prohibition. Many of them grew up with their parents smoking marijuana. So between the retiring baby boomers and the young people, and some people tell me the demographics of the next 3 to 4 election cycles that lead up to the 2020 presidential election, those elections will be decided by people under 40.
It took a group of people who grew up in the 60s to reach a certain age where they never believed the propaganda that came out in the 80s, and they don't believe the hype and never thought that cannabis was as bad as the Just Say No campaign would have you believe. And those people are really running the country right now, and a lot of that political shift has come about just with a different population being in control now.
And I don't think it's any mistake that the generation of the 60s, the generation of peace and love, which are now in their own late 60s, are the people that, you know, are changing these attitudes to some degree and changing the stereotypes.
It's always the same story. It's variations on a theme. And with marijuana, clearly, drugs were the problem, and it became an easy target when lots of young people were involved in social causes and seeking social justice in the 1960s, which spills over into the 1970s and starts the beginning of the drug war as we know it today during the administration of Richard Nixon.
I'm a baby boomer, and you know, we've been around marijuana our whole lives. Even if you don't smoke, your friends and neighbors do, and I think people my age, as they head into the retirement years, are going to want to not be treated like criminals anymore. Are going to want marijuana in their retirement.
I was raised in Memphis, Tennessee by a wonderfully loving single mother, and she came of age in the 1960s. I remember one particular afternoon, scorchingly hot summer day in Memphis. I had just come home from college, late in the college years at the University of Tennessee. Got done mowing the grass, and Mom turned to me, she said, "You know, Hunter, what I could go for right now?" I said, "What's that, Mom?" She said, "Big glass of iced tea." Now, I would have enjoyed some iced tea as well, but I could think of something else that I wanted too. So I just decided to say it. I said, "You know, Mom, you know what I could go for right now?" She said, "What's that, Hunter?" I said, "A big joint." It was an awkward pause, another awkward pause. And she turned to me slowly and said, "Hunter, I couldn't agree with you more." So then 20 minutes later, there we were, you know, 2 of-age adults in the backyard just enjoying the benefits of marijuana. And it's absolutely brought us closer over the years. That's why I was really excited to bring her out for her first legal marijuana purchase ever. So we headed to downtown Denver to Euflora on the 16th Street Mall.
Yeah, this is the place right here.
I know it. I'm excited. Hi, good. How are you?
Good. My first year already. All right, let's check it out. So he said that sativas are all down this way. I mean, you prefer the strains that kind of
make it exactly.
This one has a high giggly effect.
All right.
This one has also an uplifting effect. So this is a.
Hi.
My name's Bobby.
Hi, Bobby.
I'll be your cannabis concierge today.
I really like that more upbeat. Like, I don't want to be asleep. Okay. You know, I can get there.
Are you looking for a body high as well?
Yes, just.
So I'm going to steer you over here to our hybrid table.
Okay.
Is this your first time in a store like this?
Yes, yes.
Purchase ever.
Wow.
I think the recreational use, people are going to use, they'll come in and they'll tell me they're still doing marijuana in their state, just obviously not legally.
The stigma that's been on it for all my life was like, am I going to lose my job? And, you know, am I going to lose my child?
While shopping, Mom struck up a conversation with a group of young men from Pennsylvania about living in an illegal state.
See, now it kind of gives me a real freedom that it's legal somewhere, because being my age, you know, it makes me so happy that I don't have to, like, be inward, like, feeling like I'm a criminal.
I just got out of trouble because I'm 20 years old. I'm 24 now, and I've been wrapped up in it, and now I'm here, it's legal. It's like, oh,
Thank goodness.
It is. It's so free. It's so liberating. I mean, you just feel like, oh, I can really breathe. You know, what I'm doing is okay.
Let's check out some of these sativas, Mom.
I think part of what helped lend to this outside of the box thinking for us was I'm not from the industry. I come from the building side with a little bit of design and interior work. So for me, it was kind of more of what I would want to see when I went into a dispensary and what would be comfortable for my first time going in one. Here, they can grab the jars, they can lift them up and look at them and see the bud and open the cap and smell it.
That was her mother's name.
And then the tablets also self-educate them, and after the clients look at them, if they still have questions, then our bud tenders are happy to answer them, but it allows us to reach a broader scope of people that way.
So right here we have single serve cookies. These are the 1X servings. This is your 10 milligrams, just to get you started.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Enjoy your freedom.
It's thrilling.
Can I start with your ID, please? Perfect, thank you. The pineapple train wreck?
Yes, please. And then there's 80.
Got a 180. This is your receipt, and this is also just a little flyer about the safe uses of marijuana.
Thank you.
In Colorado.
Denver's 420 Rally, held annually on April 20th in Civic Center Park, is a free community event that features speeches by activists, concert performances by world-famous artists, and has produced perennial and iconic images of the public consumption of marijuana. The 2014 rally was particularly important, as it was the first 420 rally in the new dawn of recreational marijuana. The 420 rally is organized every year by local Denver activist Miguel Lopez.
Marijuana protests come from people who protested the Vietnam War, and that sort of scale has existed and sort of enveloped both through the 420 rally for the marijuana movement, but the marijuana movement, the enduring ambition of the movement is a very large frame that has been inclusive and is working to build a relationship with everybody that is affected by prohibition.
This year's event was attended by an estimated 60,000 people, and safety was certainly a top issue. The Denver police and a large number of interior security guards were present and screened attendees for anything dangerous on their way into the event.
You know, we have a very healthy environment where people are just, looking for newfound freedom that everybody else wants around the world. And especially since America is not just responsible for making these rules at home, but around the world. So it's not just a civil rights issue, this is a global rights, human rights issue. In any revolution, it's not about the people who are always up front on the stage. It's about everybody. It gives people a great feeling of awe in its genuine sense of awesomeness in this theater that's created by Greek ideologies of democracy. And when people go there, they feel that and they see that way that everybody else wants to be generally part of the people's voice.
Public consumption is illegal in Colorado, and dozens of people were cited for public consumption of marijuana at this year's festival. But overall, the 2014 420 rally was touted as a success by city officials, with the Denver police spokesperson having been reported as saying that because no one was injured, it was a good weekend for the city and county of Denver.
We actually have created the standards for the maintenance and beautification of the park and how it's cleaned up afterwards. So because we clean it so well, better than any other group, we've raised the bar for the city and other groups that because we know that we're one of the most criticized groups. So when we clean up the park and we say, hey, here we are, look at us, we can do the same thing.
young people kind of get this issue. They are the future, and I think it's just kind of catching fire. And then when places like Colorado and Washington State come on board and really make an effort to be responsible about regulating marijuana, to make sure it's really, you know, it is for adults. It's like alcohol. You have to be responsible about using it.
Just about everyone alive has grown up in a world where marijuana has been entirely illegal, and they've been taught that it's far more harmful than it actually is. And so it's really critical that we reach people and we get them thinking about the fact that marijuana is actually not as harmful as alcohol, so that they can start to digest that, and then once they hear about the concept of treating marijuana like alcohol, it won't seem as crazy.
When you have a national policy that's completely irrational, that's based on lies, that's based on scaring kids, the second they have an opportunity to find out what you said might not have been true, the next thing they're going to do is question what else wasn't true. They're going to say, oh, well, clearly the bigger lie was about drugs, because we've made this arbitrary line between alcohol and marijuana.
We don't say that people get high off of alcohol, but what's the difference really? Enjoying a glass of wine at night might be the same thing as taking a couple puffs of marijuana. I have a gin and tonic every once in a while, or a martini, and that's, you know, it's nice. It smooths things out. It makes the days kind of smooth. And so I see these kinds of substances as a way to make life a little more pleasant.
That's what marijuana was able to help me do, because I didn't wake up feeling hungover. Alcohol, I got tired of feeling hungover really quick. So the drinking heavily didn't necessarily do it for me. I basically beat myself up and stayed up all night.
I quit drinking alcohol about 8 years ago, and my mom quit about 10 years ago. Both of us for good reason. You know, we had family histories. It was just time to quit. But even being a recovering alcoholic myself, I absolutely feel like alcohol has its place in society, right? And the same goes for pharmaceuticals, okay? They both have positives and negatives. But when you start to look at the consensus that marijuana is a safer alternative than either of those, it's hard to deny marijuana its place at the regulated table.
Society has to realize that it's safer, period, exclamation point. It's safer than alcohol, it's safer than prescription drugs. In no way am I advocating this for kids or youth or anyone who doesn't feel like marijuana is their thing, not forcing it on them. But people always have and always will look for ways to take the edge off.
You cannot die from clean cannabis. So no matter how much you take, your body just does not absorb it. If you will, your body fills up like vitamins. That's what we know so far. So the rest of it gets flushed out.
The safety ratio of morphine is 1 to 4. So if you get prescribed 1 and you take 4, chances are you could have lethal consequences. The safety ratio of medical marijuana is 1 to 10,000. It is almost a biological impossibility to overdose from this plant. Therefore, it is a safer alternative, particularly for those struggling with, chronic pain and these chronic lifelong issues, to never even start down the slippery slope of addiction, of opiate addiction. The medicinal opportunity here is generational. It is absolutely huge.
I think it's mostly the kids, different conditions they have or cancers, and to see what it can do for them, what it has done for them. Little Lorelei and her mom, Chantel, we had done a fundraiser for Lorelei last April. She had a rare form of cancer called E-Tanter.
In 2012, Lorelei Gutierrez started experiencing unexplained fever spikes and uncontrollable vomiting, eventually resulting in the inability to walk or crawl. After discovering a brain tumor the size of a grapefruit, doctors diagnosed Lorelei with E-Tanter, a very rare form of childhood brain cancer with a minimal survivability rate. After surgery to remove as much of the tumor as possible, Lorelei's doctors were open to alternative treatments to battle her cancer.
So we decided to go with low-dose chemotherapy. And he asked, are you guys looking at alternatives? And we said, yeah, we want to try cannabis. We had already been using it for symptom relief. We were trying to use it to entice her to eat, and it was working great for the first 6 months that we were doing it. So we're like, we want to try this. And he said, okay, then we'll just monitor her blood, we'll monitor her liver, we'll keep track of her medications and make sure it's not interfering with anything, and we'll do it.
The
chemo actually melted her skin off. Very first time she wet her diaper. Like we did not expect that. We expected a rash, and that's not what happened. I've never used any cannabis oil. I've never, even when I was a kid, you know, I'd have friends that smoked pot, and it wasn't something that I ever wanted to do. And then you get something like this, where this child had a brain tumor the size of a grapefruit. So when you think about a natural plant, so why wouldn't we give it to her?
Her diet, I think, consists of like everything we possibly could find of tumor fighters. And now that we've done low-dose chemotherapy and we've done this cannabis treatment and we're on an organic diet, we're seeing results. We've had 5 MRIs so far that have shown that her tumors are shrinking and dying. For the first time, I am not afraid of losing my daughter to cancer because I have cannabis on our side. When you're going to fight anything with cannabis, then THC is very important. With brain tumors, it's an anti-angiogenic, it's an anti-proliferative, and it's anti-metastatic. So for us, THC changes everything for our treatment. If we didn't have THC, we probably wouldn't have the success that we did. And CBD would not have been able to accomplish this by itself.
Now everybody's latched on to CBD, okay? The plant has, we think, 60 to 100 cannabinoids, okay? THC is one cannabinoid that is psychoactive. So imagine what all the other cannabinoids can do for us. I just want people to understand that it's the whole plant, it's all the cannabinoids, and that when you think of THC, you shouldn't think of THC as, oh, that gets you high. You should think of THC as a lock and key mechanism with the rest of the cannabinoids, and that's why this plant works so well.
I use cannabis for my epilepsy, and I was just recently diagnosed with MS. I work full-time, and with both of these conditions, I'm convinced there's no way I would ever be able to do what I do if I was not using cannabis. When I became a patient, I realized that there was a need for lower cost medication. I wondered how people that were on SSI and food stamps and all those other programs, Medicaid and Medicare, how they were able to afford the cost of their medication. I went around and spoke to different dispensaries and asked them if they would be willing to take a cut in their prices for patients in a low and fixed income program.
Audrey is one of many professionals in the industry who assist low-income patients in gaining access to medical marijuana. Another one of those benevolent professionals is Dr. Richard Cohen at the Cohen Medical Centers.
I do not want to charge as much as other doctors are charging because I don't feel that it's worthwhile. I think it's a value that's mine as well as theirs.
This is a family business. My father's the doctor, my wife works here, my son works here, my sister works here, and I work here as well now, full time.
Approximately 20–25% of the patients come off the streets. They've never seen doctors. Their parents didn't see doctors, and they don't believe in medicine, which was something that blew me apart. I just didn't feel that that was right. So I said, I'm going to try to be their doctors and do what I can to help them. But I did not ever feel that I was worth $250 to sign my name.
The one thing I asked my father at the very beginning, you know, after he said yes, I said, why don't doctors like this? And he says it's not dosable and it's not repeatable, but other than that, we'd be all for it. Now it is. Now it is dosable, now it is repeatable. So it can do so many things. It's, you know, God's tree of life.
Older people who have injuries such as back injuries have to have something to help them sleep because they have to keep working. One of the things that really works on is, God bless them, with women for PMS, which is something I don't think everybody else knows.
I use it to wind down at night. I also use it for menstrual cramps. I believe cannabis is going to make us healthier. You can juice cannabis. You don't even have to feel the effects of a high.
A lot of things in our lives are guided by anxiety, a lot of our actions.
And I think that marijuana can quell a lot of bad feelings. It allows people to sleep. It allows them to prosper and do better in their work.
It needs to be legalized. If it's not legalized, research can't be done. If research can't be done, then doctors aren't going to get behind it.
I think it's like the soma of Brave New World.
He looked at me and he said, you know, I really wish I would have done this kind of medicine my whole life. I really think I would have made a bigger difference. We lost a sister back in 2008 to cancer. And I wish I knew then what I know now about cannabis, because we might still have a sister.
As people are realizing that medical marijuana works for people with cancer, with AIDS, epilepsy and seizures, muscle spasms, pain, they're getting more and more upset that they've been lied to, and it's becoming more politically acceptable to stand up and fight for this.
Many patients, activists, and recreational consumers congregate at the handful of cannabis clubs around the state, where once you pay a membership fee or entry fee, you're legally allowed to consume cannabis on site. While at Speakeasy Vape Lounge in Colorado Springs, we met medical marijuana patient Mimi Friedman, and she shared with us her incredible story.
I got into a car accident on New Year's Eve 2002. I was rear-ended at 50 miles an hour at a red light in the rain, and it left me with permanent spinal and sacroiliac injuries on the left side. And I was ordered to be on bed rest for about 10 months and crutches for 4. And I was put in pain management therapy on over 240 pills a month. They diagnosed me with peptic ulcer disease and told me that I would have to take antacids every day from that point on. In about 2008, I started throwing up every time I ate or drank, and I didn't know what was going on, so I went to the hospital after a few days, and they told me they didn't know what was going on, and they couldn't understand why I was throwing up, and they did a bunch of tests and couldn't diagnose me with anything. And this went on for about 5.5 months until I got a diagnosis of achalasia, which is a rare esophageal condition that causes muscle spasms in the esophagus, and they were going to do a surgery called a Heller's myotomy. So I had that done in March of 2009. And they told me that surgery was supposed to have lasting results for at least 10 years, and mine only lasted about 8 months. In October of 2011, I ended up getting my first feeding tube. It was a tube in my nose, and I had constant problems with that feeding tube, and it ended up being replaced 6 times. And so I finally had surgery in February of 2012. I had a J-tube surgically implanted directly into my intestines. They kept telling me that it wasn't supposed to hurt, but my tube hurt. My tube hurt constantly. I was in the emergency room. I got admitted to the hospital just for pain because I couldn't even move without screaming. It was really bad. They told me my feeding tube was infected and that there was a problem with it, and they didn't know why I was in so much pain and that I had to pull it out. And I had to make a snap decision right there. I was in pain, I was alone, I was scared, and so I made the decision to get the feeding tube removed. And after that, a friend said that I could come stay with him in Denver for a little while after I got out of the hospital so that I could get better. I was so sick, I was freezing cold. I just pretty much crawled into the bed in the guest room and fell asleep. And then the next day I got up and medicated the next morning, and I felt myself coming back to life. I felt my blood pressure returning to normal. My body started warming back up. As soon as I got to Denver, I started reaching out to the community and branching out to people and just kind of said, like, hey, I'm a patient. I just got here. I'm sick. Sorry. I found really good people to help me. And I started learning about concentrates, and as soon as I switched to concentrates, I realized that life without my feeding tube could be possible. Now I have a house and a car, and I work part-time, and you know, life is still a struggle. I still have to do dabs at the onset of symptoms immediately. So I know firsthand the difference between living on natural medicine versus living on Schedule I narcotics. Talk to every doctor you go to, talk to every nurse you see. Just please don't give up on your life. They might tell you that you're dying, they might tell you that you have no hope, but it's because they don't know how much better you can get with cannabis. Just give it a chance. Your life is worth that chance.
You know, Mimi's journey to recovery through her cannabis use really just echoes the sentiments and the experiences of hundreds of thousands of other medical marijuana patients, both here in America and around the world, whose lives have been, revolutionized, have been saved, such as in Mimi's case, by their marijuana use. A few months after our first stop in with the Gutierrez family, we checked back in to see how little Lorelei was battling cancer.
In April, Lorelei had meningitis that is caused by the dying tumors that irritated her brain enough to cause a new tumor. The doctor is very honest. He's always been very honest with us. He said that without radiation, the tumor would continue to grow.
She just finished a 15-day radiation session where we did very, very short sessions of focal radiation. So we targeted just specifically the tumor and not any of the other part of the brain. We never had to use a feeding tube during treatment, which is very uncommon for her age. But because we had the oils, she didn't have to endure a feeding tube. She was able to maintain a safe weight without becoming malnourished. We were able to protect her vital organs. She didn't have any hearing or vision loss like we anticipated. She didn't end up having severe learning disabilities like we anticipated. As we progressed to better oils and increasing her dosage, she still continues to eat very well. We don't have to have her on large amounts of pharmaceuticals because of the cannabis that she's on. She also is learning how to become mentally and emotionally capable of being around people.
So I have a green thumb and I'm really good at growing things. I can grow flowers, tomatoes, and so when Lorelei needed this, I knew that we could grow our own plants and we could grow quality plants and healthy plants for her.
It's incredibly expensive to use this method of treatment because we don't get covered by insurance. Of course, it's not covered by Medicaid or anything like that. It comes out of our pocket. So we decided to try and learn how to do it ourselves, and we thought that this was the best solution for our situation.
My nieces and nephews joke with me because, they always say, we thought you were going to be the old lady with the cats, and I'm like, no, I'm going to be the old lady with the pot plants in my backyard. Never thought I would have any pot in my house, much less a whole garden full.
We're not parents who just decided to do this randomly. We looked at what was out there. We looked at what information we had. We were not afraid to ask our physicians their opinions. And what the information that we gathered was that there is medicinal value. And for us, that medical value is currently giving us the quality of life that chemotherapy could never touch.
This has been a miracle for us because Lorelei was not expected to live past a year. Actually, she wasn't even expected to live past the surgery. And as you can see, Lorelei has done extremely well.
All of those stereotypes that go with cannabis are not happening with her. We are seeing that her brain is healthy. She is learning. She's not a zombie every day. She's able to play. She's able to interact. She doesn't sleep her life away.
She didn't lose weight. She didn't end up dying, which is, the goal. And we don't know what the future is going to be for Lorelei as far as the tumor is concerned, but for now, Lorelei has a quality of life, and you can't put a value on that.
Hey, say cheese!
An enjoyable quality of life is really what everyone on this planet strives for, and the number of known medical applications of marijuana is rapidly expanding into new frontiers. Many of our brave military veterans are now returning home with debilitating cases of post-traumatic stress disorder, and they're finding that medical marijuana is truly giving them their lives back. Colonel Roger Martin is one of those veterans, and he started Operation Grow for Vets, an organization that has become famous for producing and distributing marijuana products to veterans free of charge.
Our primary mission is to help veterans
reduce or eliminate the dangerous narcotic medications that they're taking by including marijuana in their treatment regime.
We're actually starting out with a lot of the original high CBD strains that we're coming in contact with right now. And we're going to start breeding our own strains through those to try to come up with the highest level of CBD that we can.
We make the tincture ourselves, and that's a THC and a little bit of CBD extract. Our eventual goal is to have, one that's high CBD, low THC, and any type of concentrate basically that you could want or need based on medicinal value.
Any sort of public forum is going to be difficult for somebody who's just been back from a combat zone. Just the number of people that are around you has a huge bearing on whether you feel safe or not, and whether there's a perceived threat in the environment. Just being on constant watch 24 hours a day, 7 days a week overseas, generally it's not very easy to get rid of those habits, and you end up coming back to the States and maintaining such a high level of vigilance that it's impossible to relax. It's impossible to see anything but danger.
It was after about 3 months that I noticed a change. And over the course of the next 9 months is when I really started to realize that something was wrong. He was definitely not the person that I married and I've known for, since I was in high school. He just was a totally different man.
I couldn't see the beauty in anything. It was all agony.
We didn't know if he'd be back.
He used to always be in his room.
Yeah, he just didn't engage. He didn't know how, and he didn't want to be around anymore.
There's not really a way to keep violence out of your soul, being a soldier. I think the vast majority of us have done and seen things that not many people should see or do, and as a result we suffer from it mentally, and a lot of our relationships become broken when we get back to the States, as I experienced with my own family.
It is very difficult in a lot of situations whenever you start getting a little bit anxious, whenever something is important on the line to you, something's important, to be able to even mentally switch yourself out of the feeling, not even necessarily the thoughts, but just the feeling inside that you can't get rid of, that if you don't succeed at this, everybody's going to die. And that's where marijuana helped, is that for the first time, I was able to look at these problems without everything having to necessarily be on the line. And then I could separate it intelligently, the way I wanted to. Okay, let's kind of reverse engineer the problem, what's really bugging you. And it was a great way, while I sought therapy at the VA, to actually try to be able to explore these things without feeling that I'm going to lose everything.
When I tried cannabis for the first time, my eyes were opened again, and I felt a calm come over me that I hadn't felt in 5, 6, 7 years. And suddenly I was able to pay attention to the details in life, and I could laugh at my children when they do something crazy. I could actually take the time to get to know my wife again and start to rebuild the relationships that I had broken so horribly.
When he first tried it, it was almost instantaneous, the change, the shift that I saw. And so this has given him life and given him back to us. So can't ask for anything more than that.
It absolutely helped calm me, helped put me at peace, and helped center me and ground me to where I felt like I actually belonged in the place that I was doing, because it wasn't necessarily Marine Richard anymore. It was the musician, it was the artist, it was the person that was trying to find peace and balance.
I think it should be available to anybody, but certainly to any veteran. I mean, these are men and women who, if not for them, you and I wouldn't be having a conversation here today. I mean, they risked it all. Some of them sacrificed it all. And if those people, again, don't deserve a treatment option that is less harmful than the one that they're receiving now, I can't imagine who does deserve it.
One of the big reasons that legal cannabis happened in Colorado this year was the resistance to add PTSD for vets coming back onto the qualifying conditions, and they tried to get it through 2 times and it didn't, and it changed the entire focus for a huge population of people that chose to support a different way to be able to have access to cannabis.
And as a society, I think it's very difficult to look at these young men and women that are returning from war and know what they're going through and know there's something there that can help them, and just say, oh, well, because it's illegal, because of this fiction we've all been told, we're just going to continue to let them suffer.
It seems inexcusable to me as a society where we're going to ask a young adult to go overseas and defend our borders for our individual freedoms and rights, and then require them to come back and not necessarily get access to the appropriate medicine. And so I think the cannabis industry as a whole, and certainly what we're allowing for in Colorado and subsequently Washington State, is going to present a massive opportunity for, again, that social change.
The fact of the matter is 22 veterans kill themselves every day in the United States, and that does not include the ones who die from drug overdose.
I feel like I need to talk about this stuff in my situation. It's because I was so blessed afterwards coming back with a family that supported me and loved me, that didn't understand what I was going through, but wanted to be there for me. But the understanding part, it's non-existent and it never will be. No one can understand what I've gone through unless they've actually been there, and that's a very good thing. It's a lonely road that nobody understands me, but I'd rather talk about opera and light and love anyway, you know.
Veterans, in particular, they need access to cannabis. They absolutely should have the right to grow their own medication, to get them off these other addictive substances.
So how have your lives changed now with Matt's cannabis use?
I was married before I got out the military and started a family. Family is the reason I got out of the military, because my wife didn't want to travel with a young child, small child. I've got 2 sons here in Missouri. I've got 1 in Illinois. A lot of nieces and nephews. And of course, they all got kids. I'd do anything for my family.
Among people who are informed on the medical marijuana issue, it's really just a general understanding that there is a medicinal benefit to this plant. But then I think really the question becomes, if these people do need this medicine, how do we get it to them? What are the concerns that we need to take into consideration to make sure that these programs are implemented successfully?
You go into it and you don't realize how many things you have to figure out. So whether it's advertising and labeling, whether it's contents, how much marijuana can be in an edible or a soda, how many can be sold together. It's sort of one of those things that you just kept going down these paths, and each path you realize had all these branches, and eventually you realize there's really hundreds or thousands of regulatory questions that we had to answer.
Denver did something really smart also, and that was an outdoor advertising ban, which we supported as well, because there really were people dressed up on the street like joints, spinning signs, and no one wants to pull into their neighborhood and see that.
We're going to see a lot of debate about how marijuana should be marketed, and it'll be really up to voters and elected representatives to decide what the standards should be.
The most important part of the social experiment is removing the idea that marijuana itself is this crazy, dangerous drug.
A lot of people that I know that smoke marijuana are very artistic, they're very talented, they're very driven, but they choose to recreate or maybe medicate with marijuana.
Whether they have dreadlocks or whether they have a crew cut, it really makes no difference. It's just another person. As long as they're using marijuana responsibly, no one should care.
The stigma is a real issue.
And the reason that I came out as medical marijuana patient advocate, RX Mary Jane, because someone needed to step forward and put a real face to what it means to be a medical marijuana patient.
Many people use marijuana that you'd never consider. We're talking politicians, athletes, you name it. Every segment of society, rich and poor, black and white, male, female.
You're going to see people in business suits walking in here, people in professional attire swinging by on their lunch break to shop. It's very much so just a regular retail experience. They're just purchasing cannabis instead.
This is a space where there is so much misinformation, so much taboo, and it's the lack of objective information which has unfortunately over the last decades created these sorts of stereotypes. The fact is, medical marijuana patient, it's your mom, it's your neighbor, it's your plumber, it's your cousin, it's everybody. The average age of our patient here at River Rock is 43 years old. We're about 60% male, 40% female. So this really is a cross-section of society.
It's now widely accepted. I don't have to be afraid of what people will think of me. Will I be ostracized? And so with that freedom, that fosters conversation. It fosters the ability to tackle it head on and to say, these are the issues, let's not put our head in the sand and let's look at them.
Our culture is doing terrible damage to itself by making criminals out of people who are not.
What used to be legal now becomes against the law. And you begin making war on people who are just normal, ordinary citizens. And once you go through that, then of course you create great distrust within society, because the lines between criminality and not criminality begin to shrink. And this causes enormous problems because we don't know who the good guys and the bad guys are anymore.
You know, if you're convicted of a felony, you have to put that on your job application. If you are incarcerated, you know, you lose your family, you lose the opportunity for education, you lose the opportunity to work, you lose your opportunity to be a contributing member of society.
The point of justice is not to create a permanent underclass, right? The purpose of justice is to give people tools so that they don't have to lie, cheat, and steal. People should not be experiencing the inability to rent an apartment because they were selling marijuana in their dorm room 20 years ago.
Well, we need to start letting people out of prisons who have been put there for long terms in prison sentences. I mean, what is the point of putting people in prison for 20 or 30 years for having possessed marijuana? It's ridiculous. And part of the reason we're doing that is because the prison system is now a growth industry. And a lot of money we're putting into prisons is going into the pockets of corporations. We need to change that and realize that incarceration for nonviolent crimes is itself a crime.
My health is fairly good. I'm 61 years old. I work every day. I don't remember a day I was off. Fortunately, I'm pretty good health. I try to stay that way. I try to exercise and keep myself healthy. Play a little handball and do some walking. My name is Jeff Mazansky. I'm serving life in prison without parole for 3 nonviolent crimes of marijuana. I've been in prison since 1994.
In 1984, Jeff was convicted of the felony possession and sale of marijuana. Approximately half a pound was found at Jeff's home at the time of his arrest, an amount that many dispensaries in Colorado sell in under an hour. In 1991, Jeff pleaded guilty to the felony possession of what was between 2 and 3 ounces of marijuana, an amount that is comparable to what the average medical marijuana patient in Colorado is allowed to possess. Jeff did not serve prison time for those 2 charges. Then, in 1993, Jeff was arrested in an undercover sting where he was accused of a conspiracy to acquire 7 pounds of marijuana and allegedly handled the marijuana in question. This was Jeff's 3rd felony strike for marijuana, and on this 3rd conviction, where he was not in possession of marijuana at the time of his arrest, Jeff was given the unfathomable sentence of life without parole.
It's turned my life upside down for the last 20 years.
and not just mine, my whole family's.
In putting, say, a male in prison, happens to be the breadwinner for the family, you take him out of the family and put him in prison for a low-level drug crime, possession, or low-level distribution. You've now taken him out of his family unit. You've taken his ability to produce income, and there are other consequences that result from being locked up.
I know for myself, I wouldn't have dropped out of school if he would have stayed out, if he'd have been out of prison. My life would probably be 100% different right now. I'd probably had 5 or 7 years of college. I wouldn't be in a situation I'm in, which is not bad, but it's not the best, you know. I just really want it, my whole family wants him home to spend some time with us. He's getting older.
I love them and miss them all. And, would sure like to get to meet some of them. See, I've worked most of my life. So I've got injuries, lower back, muscle injuries, joint injuries and stuff like that. Marijuana helped a lot of that. I could go to work every day, as well as keep my head. Don't drink. I've seen too many people that drink that lose it, and I'm not a drinker. I mean, they haven't even scratched the lid on the medical for marijuana because they haven't had a chance to, because they haven't even been allowed to do the research on it, let alone use it. But people for thousands of years have been using marijuana and have known the medical uses for marijuana that's good for them.
I pity those people that are behind bars on probably three who knows how serious strikes, and they're taken out of the culture and the population forever.
When he was out and free, that's what he did every day, was help somebody some way to keep out of there. I've had friends of mine tell me the same thing, and that things that he said to them when we was young changed their life for the better now. He was helping people and he was changing people's lives. He could fix a car, he could build a house. I mean, he could do anything under the sun. It's a terrible tragedy for him to be sitting there for 20 years for pot, while my family out here, every one of us misses him every day. I grew up without him for most of my teenage to adult life, and I want some of that back, you know what I mean? I want to be able to sit down and hang out with him and catch up without sitting across from him in a penitentiary.
When I talk to other inmates about my life without sentence for marijuana, you know, they really can't believe it. In fact, they all told me I was lying, that I was hiding something. They thought I was a baby raper or something. I told them go up to the library and check. Here, look at the paperwork that I got. Check. And then finally, some of this stuff has been coming out in the news, and they've been seeing it, and they're coming up to me and say, "Oh, you ain't been lying all along," you know, because they all thought I was lying, and they can't believe it. I mean, a lot of them are in here for murder and got a way out.
We just can't keep putting people in prison and using our laws for something that's all around us. It's going to be here.
Register to vote. When these bills come up, vote on them. Take the power back in your own hands. Government's supposed to be working for the people, not the people for the government. My parents died since I've been in here. I've never got to see their grave. I'd like to do that.
Jeff Mazansky's life sentence without parole, it's absolutely inexcusable. And there are a ton of online resources out there that folks can visit to help get Jeff out of prison. But when you compare Jeff's lifelong confinement against the freedom that Colorado marijuana users experience, you know, people like myself, it just becomes that much clearer that we as a nation have got to move forward on this issue and get people like Jeff back to their families. Jeff shouldn't be in prison. Jeff should be enjoying his life, attending events like the High Times Cannabis Cup, you know, one of the many events here in Colorado that exposed Jeff's sentence for the travesty of justice that it truly is.
This is a standard trade show. Might be having a little bit better time, actually, but that's pretty much what it is. Business as usual.
The 2014 High Times Cannabis Cup was as much a competition for who had the best buds in the state as it was a chance for the cannabis community to come together and to celebrate the legalization of adult use marijuana in Colorado.
borderline overwhelming, but it's very cool. There's this great energy in here today. I'll tell you, one of the things that I found really surprising, and I love it being a Colorado resident, I think this morning like 70% of the people I talked to were from out of state. They're here on tourism, and they're just like, Colorado rocks. So there's just this cool energy here today.
I am Jonah Tacoma from DabStars. As soon as it became an actual industry, had to get involved. So jumped in at the bottom level, was a volunteer, went from volunteer to bud tender, went from bud tender to social media manager, and now I have the biggest dabbing page in the world. So it's been a quick transition. We all understand how ridiculous alcohol prohibition was, and we're starting to look at this with the same glasses.
If you think about cannabis, you know, these events are opportunities for people to come together as friends and recreate out in public, if you'd say. With the overall idea of it, it's a calmer crowd.
I get the goosebumps talking about it. It's really surreal. For me, it was real validation that adult use consumers and medical marijuana patients converged on a venue, and categorically they behaved. They did exactly what we would have hoped they would do. They peacefully congregated. They experienced all the benefits, both medicinal and recreational, associated with marijuana, and it was a spectacular success. And from my vantage point, looking down onto a congregation of tens of thousands of people was incredibly validating.
It's starting new phenomenons. You'll see these type of events, whether upscale with the arts and the symphony and art galleries, or concerts in a park. This is all just the beginning. I think we're in the first 100 yards of a marathon.
You know, a lot of people ask me, they say, oh, Rachel, marijuana's legal in Colorado. You're done, what do you do now? And I laugh because we have so much more work to do.
It's really not about the substance, it's about the fears that exist in the minds of men.
Marijuana is going to be sold here. We're going to do something that no one else is trying to do. We're going to try to control it through licensing, through regulations, through accountability, transparency.
It has the possibility of being one of the saving industries of this nation when we desperately need it.
We're setting up an industry with laws and regulations that are going to make this industry safe, make the people that consume the product safe, and make the people that choose not to consume the product safe.
All of this has allowed the public to embrace this.
Wine is about $80 billion a year. Beer is about $200 billion a year. I think marijuana is somewhere in between there. It's a huge economic impact.
And everybody's going to sit back and understand that in their state or in their city, it's going on. It's in the black market, it's unregulated, it's not taxed.
Everything that's available to you is a part of your life, and you need to talk, particularly young people, about that all these things are a part of your life and what the age-appropriate decision to do and the health-appropriate decision to do. And the only way to do that is to start doing it by telling the truth.
People need to be open, they need to have the conversation, they need to step up and not be afraid. I know it's really scary for some people in other parts of the country and other parts of the world.
I was in Uruguay, in South America, meeting with their presidential cabinet, telling them, letting them know this is how we legalize marijuana. So there's a new model for people to look at.
This is the story that the rest of the world should be watching. The eyes of the world should be on Colorado and Washington State. You've got two examples of how marijuana is progressing in a legal and safe way.
Become active in your community, know who your state legislators are, know who your city council people are, and let them know that this is an important issue for you. And for some of you out there, it is an issue of life and death for the health of your family members or for your own health. And so, it's time to break the taboo. It's time to sort of break the chains of prohibition and embrace the change that we all need. Step forward, let your voice be heard, and regulate and, tax this substance as we all know it should be.
At least now you're starting to see. We told you that you can't get rid of marijuana.
and the issue is now front and center on the global stage.
There's a global message that is certainly more human related to this overall issue than it is anything to do with the plant itself. And for 99% of our history, marijuana was already legal. It was something that was available for sale. You could use it. Oftentimes it was used for spiritual and medicinal purposes. And I think that there's a common thread that still exists across humanity in allowing people to experiment with our human consciousness. It's a natural human desire that has existed for thousands of years. And we have to be real when we're talking about people's want to experiment with marijuana.
Marijuana is like alcohol to some people in that it can relax them. It's something to take their mind off troubles, whether you're in India or the US or Brazil. My wife is from Iran. I was able to go to Iran with her in September, which is very hard for an American to do. I had a conversation at a party, and one of the guys there in broken English asked me where I was from. And when I said Colorado, his eyes kind of lit up and he smiled and he said, "Oh, marijuana legalization." In Iran, someone was saying this, which is a very closed-off country. So this is becoming a worldwide thing.
You know, it's not just Colorado, it's not just Washington, it's not just the 20 other states that have adopted the medical use of cannabis. It's countries like Uruguay, which have just legalized it and is now creating a regulatory program. It is countries like the Czech Republic, who is looking for ways to integrate the use of cannabis in its medical framework and in its system. And so it really is the awakening and sort of the first step of an international consensus that we need better alternatives.
Colorado called for those better alternatives, and it's personally been an honor to have been a part of this process. You know, I've helped dispensary owners with inventory control, all kinds of compliance issues. I've helped them to get their recreational licenses. And, I'm happy to call many of them friends, hundreds of them friends, and many of them are in this film. And I think that we all feel honored at the end of the day to really have this opportunity in this time and space to do what we're doing, particularly when the rest of the world doesn't have that opportunity. Well, yet anyway.
Sooner or later, you're just not going to continue to live in a community where you're being oppressed. That's why, so far in Colorado, what we've seen is we've attracted more businesses, more employers, and more people to our state, because those people who were already entrepreneurs, already business people, already
Here in Colorado, we're taking our heads up out of the sand. Not in the neighborhood of most dangerous drugs in the entire world.
You can raise a question of what kind of a democracy in prisons with 5% of the world's population has 25% of the world's prisoners.
Americans believe what they see, not necessarily what the government tells them.
Cannabis is a medicine that's been around for many thousands of years. This is a genie that's not going back into the bottle.
Am I the only one that sees through the propaganda?
You're on the right side of morality, you're on the right side of history, you're on the right side of economic theory. This whole marijuana thing, it's part of a broader discussion about our society that we need to have.
How does it compare to the other substances that we regulate, the other psychoactive substances like alcohol, like tobacco, even like caffeine?
People need to really educate themselves. I can envision, people in nursing homes using cannabis. Most of our products being made out of hemp.
This cannabis plant is an incredibly redeeming plant. It's important to understand as a society how important this plant will be as we continue to evolve.
I was raised very conservatively. The propaganda against marijuana, you fear it. With really no experience of it, with no knowledge of it, I was very, very strongly against it. All through high school, all through the entire Marine Corps experience, and even after my first year of school. Within that first hit, everything changed.
Why would this decorated Iraq War veteran be considered a criminal along with the millions of other people who use marijuana both medically and recreationally, when the majority of Americans support legalization.
I'm Colorado marijuana industry insider Hunter Bradge.
The creative decided that they wanted to leave wherever they were doing that and bring that to Colorado because they also like to consume marijuana and don't want to no longer want to live in a state that doesn't support that.
The drug war has been awful. It has been one of the worst policies in the history of the United States. We're 40 years into the drug war. We spent $1 trillion. We have the highest incarceration rate in the entire world, higher than Iran, North Korea, China, Saudi Arabia, the highest incarceration rate in the world, and marijuana is universally available.
As soon as you move to criminalize anything, you, in effect, create a society where trust begins to evaporate. It was corrupting for police, for judges, for lawyers, and for what is now the vast criminal justice system in the United States.
Frankly, I don't think a law enforcement officer who thinks that I'm ruining my life for smoking marijuana should put me in jail and ruin my life for doing that activity.
You cannot study the drug war or teach people about the drug war without, in effect, playing it out against a much broader backdrop. That is essential.
I oppose the legalization of marijuana, and that includes its sale, its possession, and its use. I do not believe you can have effective criminal justice based on the philosophy that something is half legal and half illegal. That is my position, despite what the Commission has recommended.
We've talked about this so-called war on drugs since, well, at least since Nixon. And we've seen that the traditional way of fighting this war hasn't been successful. It's been very costly in terms of the cost of people's lives, the rise of criminal cartels in foreign countries that have come across the border into America. And we've seen that there's now a better way to do things.
The scientific community, particularly the international scientific community out of Israel, out of Japan, out of the UK, that have been studying this now for decades, I think further reinforce the point that we have an opportunity here. We have a botanical bonanza. Our medical director likes to say, if this plant were discovered in the Amazon, 60 days ago, 2 months ago, and it didn't carry with it the taboo and it didn't carry with it the social stigma of 70 years of prohibition, Big Pharma would be salivating and would be duking it out to see who has control of this plant.
Marijuana was part of the American toolbox for medicine for the entire history of the continent until 70 years ago. This is just back to the future.
I never would have believed even 5 years ago that we would be here today, and this is exactly where we are.
People are going into a store, they're purchasing marijuana that's tested, that's safe, that's regulated, they know what they're getting, they're having a better experience, they're coming from all over the world to do it, and they're doing so, and they're leaving all of that money in the coffers of those city governments.
This model that Colorado has set up is a model that could be replicated not only in the United States amongst other states, but really anywhere in the world. It's the same mantra of tax it and legalize it, and we're seeing that happen with great success in Colorado, and the rest of the world is truly watching how this rolls out.
We've reached a point where now the voters, 55% of the voters in Colorado have passed Amendment 64. And they have said, look, we should license marijuana businesses. We should regulate and tax marijuana sales. And these businesses can exist, and we're okay with that.
I think Colorado's a great testing state. And I think once they see how successful it's been here, how there's been a lot of us following the regulations and following the rules and how successful it's been, the revenue we're bringing in, then I think slowly America will jump on board.
The whole world is watching. We're doing something here that's never happened before. We've got to be better than anyone thought we could be.
It's incredibly important to understand as a society how important this plant will be as we continue to evolve. We're certainly in the midst of what I would describe as political, legal, and social change, and I would suggest that Colorado is really the nexus of that.
It takes incredibly talented and dedicated individuals to lead the type of social change that we are seeing here in Colorado. And many of those all-stars work here in this mansion that houses the marijuana law offices of Vicente Cederberg. Several of the other socially influential organizations and people leading the movement also operate here, including Mason Tavert, the communications director of the Marijuana Policy Project.
Leading up to 2012, we really focused on educating voters about the simple fact that marijuana is safer than alcohol, because we knew that once they came to understand that, there would be a lot of support for treating it that way. And so we ran local ballot initiatives, we ran a statewide ballot initiative in 2006, all with the real overarching goal of...
Welcome to the conversation. This is Growing Reason.
January 1, we had people camped out front. The first people got there about 2 o'clock in the morning. We had red ropes to manage the crowd. It was really cold here in January, so we went out immediately and rented propane heaters to set up in the lines. The lines got all the way down the block. We had a 3-hour wait to get into the store, and that was ringing a transaction every 90 seconds, which I think is even acceptable by fast food standards.
You think about not Y2K necessarily, but Black Thursday, day after Thanksgiving, people rushing the Walmarts, rushing the Targets, and people weren't pushing. People were in a good mood. People were friendly. People were excited to see that one of their government officials was actually out there.
Media outlets from across the world showed up wanting to cover something crazy happening, and instead what they saw was just a bunch of excited people from across the world waiting in line.
There was a lot of excitement, really long lines, and really calm people, just excited to be the first people to say they purchased marijuana legally.
What we saw firsthand here was a massive amount of people showing up to celebrate and to, again, support the movement and celebrate the end of Prohibition. And, you know, we were able to see about 400 people on January 1st. We probably had about 1,500 people show up to try to get in.
Most people wait in line for 4 hours. They're angry. I never had anybody even remotely upset that they had to wait. It was more of a social gathering than it was a line.
We didn't really see any sort of disorder. People were nice and happy, and it was a very fun day, which was, you know, tremendously relieving, because I think, you know, there is a bit of the fear of the unknown for everybody there.
I talked to this one gentleman. I said, "How long have you been waiting in line?" And he said, "I've been waiting here for 2 hours, 45 minutes, and 59 years, and I am so excited." Like, people just could not believe that they were allowed to come in and actually shop for cannabis.
Because of marijuana's universal ability to transcend age, gender, and culture, the excitement over legal marijuana has gained worldwide momentum.